Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of Cuberviews. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we are joined by a really awesome guest, my longtime friend, Jamie Stone. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Ian?
I'm doing so well. I've known Jamie for many years. We've played all for years and years at our local game store, Games IRL in Avon, Connecticut. If you happen to live in the area, we cube every week. We've done so many different chaos drafts, conspiracy drafts, sheriff drafts. I've come to know you very well. You are a very good Magic player. So, and you've also built a very cool cube.
Why, thank you.
And you're also a judge, so that's very cool.
That's true. I actually was at CubeCon this year. So sad you couldn't come, by the way. It was really awesome. You missed Ryan 3-0ing 5 consecutive drafts and then biffing out in the top 128 immediately. I felt so bad for him, but he did manage to collect 5 trophy pins, which was very
It's
exciting. You
so
should ask him.
impressive.
You need to ask him to show you those sometime. But so I actually passed my L2 certification at CubeCon, so now I am a level 2 judge.
Oh, you did. That's so exciting. Congratulations.
Sure. Thank you.
We need more judges in this world.
We sure do. Magic is a complicated game at the best of times, and you can really see that when you look at some of the cubes that you saw at CubeCon.
Yes. What was your favorite cube that you played there?
Ooh, gosh. I unfortunately did not get a chance to cube very much since I was on staff for most of the event. But I did really enjoy the Changeling cube when I played it.
Ooh, I wanted to play that so bad.
It looks very cool. So for people who don't know what the changeling mechanic is, changeling says that a creature with changeling is all creature types at all time on the battlefield, on the stack, and graveyard, hand, library, everywhere. And the additional rule for that cube is everyone has an emblem that says all of your creature cards everywhere have changeling, which made certain cards way better. For example, the deck I built used Birchlore Rangers and Heritage Druid alongside Magda Brazen Outlaw
Ooh.
and the rep and some of the rebels that search other rebels out of the deck to build the weirdest Rube Goldberg machine you have ever seen in your life. And I died to somebody playing Harabaz Druid into Cloud Shredder Sliver into Mana Dorks into Three Lords swing kill you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that
It
cube
was
sounds so
very
fun.
wild.
I'm glad to hear you had a fantastic time. And yeah, but today we're talking about a cube that I've played many times. It's probably one of the first cubes that I'd played that was like a unique cube that wasn't just like vintage cube or legacy cube. Yeah, so you've been curating your 15 card Highlander cube for a while. Tell me about it.
So 15 card Highlander is a very interesting format. For the most part, it plays like regular Magic. The difference is that when you're drafting, instead of 3 packs of 15 cards, you will draft 2 packs of 10. And then when you construct your deck, it has to be exactly 15 cards, including the lands. And the only additional rule is that if you draw from an empty library, you don't lose the game. You just don't get to draw a card. So what this does is it changes the context of certain cards drastically. My favorite example is Ghostly Prison. Ghostly Prison's a pretty decent card in a normal game of Magic. But when your opponent only has access to a maximum of 6 mana, it becomes very punishing. You either get to
Yes.
cast spells or hit your opponent. And sometimes you don't even get to do that.
Absolutely. It's super cool. And so tell us about your history with Magic and cube design. When did you get started with it? When was the first cubes that you played?
I started playing Magic way back when, in 99, 2000. I saw Magic cards a lot earlier than that because my uncle used to play, and I would watch him be slinging his revised unlimited cards over the table, and I thought that
Wow, I
was
didn't know
really
you've been
cool.
playing for so long. That's cool.
Yeah, so the first deck that I actually got, I think, was like a Nemesis or Prophecy pre-constructed deck with Kavu in it.
High power.
Oh, extremely. I loved slamming 5 mana 3/3s with no upside.
Yeah. And when was the first time that you played cube?
The very first time I played Cube was probably I used to go to a game store in Torrington when I was in high school. And I would go down there for standard because I used to grind RCQs and stuff I was not very good, but I'd go down for standard, I'd go down for modern, I'd go down for drafts, and I got to know some of the guys there, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to come cube with us?" And I'm like, "What is that?" And they're like, "It's like a draft. You'd like it." And I went and I got to draft somebody's vintage cube, and I was like, "This is really cool." And it sort of snowballed from there.
Yeah, what year was that around?
Probably about 2004, 2005.
Oh
No, it must have been
wow,
it must have
really
been a
early
little, it
cube.
must have been a little later than that because I could drive.
That's like really into cube, early cube. That's amazing.
Yeah, the very first cubes were all usually like vintage power cubes, and Cube has evolved a lot since then, which is really cool to see. You get to see all the cool new environments that people have curated, but for the most part, it was here's my cube. This one's different. It doesn't have the Power 9 in it.
Yes. And what do you do outside of work? What are some of your hobbies? What do you do for work?
So my day job, I work as a manufacturing technician in medical manufacturing, and I also wear many other hats. So I do judge work, and I also work as a barback at a craft cocktail bar.
Yes, you make some
You can tell I
amazing
like to
drinks.
brew. Yeah.
Yes, you're a real brewer, absolutely. Last time we had a big cube event at my house with 8 people, you brought the drinks and it was so good. It made the night even better.
Yeah, I'm glad I was able to lubricate people's drafting decisions.
Yes. Get him a little drunk so we couldn't play as well. Absolutely.
Man, I was right there alongside with you. I'm like, God, I love rum.
And so what was the inspiration behind building this 15 card Highlander cube? I mean, to have started with vintage cube, such a traditional place,
So
and then to now go to such a unique, interesting design.
So I first came up with the concept. I can't take credit for it. I actually saw there is a cube called the Degenerate Microcube. It was actually highlighted on the Lucky Paper Radio podcast. Shout out to
I've
those
heard
guys.
of
They're
that one.
awesome. But the way it works is that is essentially a vintage cube compressed like a chunk of coal into a diamond. It is you basically just draft the most obnoxious degenerate combo deck you can, and you try to turn two or turn three kill your opponent. It's really cool, but as a format, it's a little deterministic for me. Like you're just sort of goldfishing yourself, and I thought to myself, this concept is really cool, but what if it lasted a little bit longer? Can I stretch this out so that the decisions matter a little bit more and you're not just like thorkling people on like turn two every single game
Yeah,
into force of will.
that's super cool. I mean, shout outs to Lucky Paper Radio. I listen to them every week. Big inspiration behind me starting this podcast. And I've definitely heard them talk about the Degenerate Microcube many times. And I hope to play it someday. That's like you said, vintage cube, but boiled down to be the most degenerate possible.
Yeah, so the idea that like you can drastically increase the consistency of your deck like that was really interesting to me. So I decided to design my cube in such a way that you can have all of your interactive pieces, and as opposed to like rocket tag, where you're just trying to like wait for the other person to blink so you can slam them with channel fireball, it's more like fencing. Because after game one, you know for the most part what's in your opponent's deck, and then you have some decisions to make. Do I sideboard? A sideboard could be immensely important in this format because changing one card is, I think the math is like 8% of your deck. Like it's a lot. So an entirely transformative sideboard is totally possible in the format where you swap out one basic and three cards, and then all of a sudden you go from a tempo deck to a control deck or vice versa.
Absolutely. It's really cool. I mean, it inspired me to build my bulk cube, which is similar, 2 packs of 10, micro 15 card deck. You do not die for decking out, but also you're at 3 life. So I was trying to go a little bit on the faster end, but yours was definitely a huge inspiration for my cube.
It's very exciting to see the proliferation of these microcubes. I actually have not yet had a chance to showcase mine at CubeCon, but somebody saw my cube in the voting in year one and they said, "That's really cool. I want to do something like that." And then their cube got into the event on year two. And then the
Oh,
exact same thing happened in year three this year, where somebody saw my cube in the voting in year two, and they said, "That's really cool. I want to build that." And then their cube got in. So I am waiting for my chance to shine on stage, but it's nice to essentially see the grandkids growing up.
Yes, your cube's children have essentially gotten into the event. So your cube can feel very proud of its children. And so with the decks being so small, 15 card decks, let's say on average people play four, maybe five lands. You only draft two packs of tens. You only get 20 cards in total. How did that affect the decisions and what kind of cards you put into the cube? Do cards have to play more than one role? Or how do you decide on how to put cards into this?
So my philosophy on this has sort of shifted a little bit over time. Initially, I wanted every card that isn't a piece of interaction to be able to stand on its own and potentially win the game. But that sort of caused all the archetypes I was building into the cube to fall apart because you didn't need to draft for something, you just picked the best card in every pack. So now what I've sort of shifted to is there are really powerful build around cards. I try to keep them inside the multicolored section because what that means is you find something cool and then you can either branch out in either direction of those colors to find a deck that works. In the worst case scenario, you still have a functional pile of cards, but in the best case scenario, you pick up two or even maybe three of the multicolored cards in your section. You have a core engine, and then it's up to you to decide how to support that with all of the other pieces you've picked up. Maybe you go all in on something like Luminarch Ascension, and the entire rest of your deck is like a hard control shell with lots of removal, some counter magic, maybe one or two pieces of recursion in case Luminarch Ascension gets answered, or maybe you find something like Halo Forager or Etrata the Silencer. One of my favorite inclusions into a cube like this, by the way, is Etrata and sidebar Yadaro Wandering Monster, which was in
Yes.
both of the microcubes I saw over the past couple of years. Because again, it's an interesting card, but because the context of the format changes it, like if you're shuffling Yadaro or Etrata in your library and your library is empty, that is your deck, so you have the consistency back there, and the card becomes viable. You don't have to worry about like, I'll cycle Yadaro once and never see it again.
Absolutely. And so a big part of this cube is you only have 15 cards. So after your opening hand, there's only eight cards left in your deck. You run out of cards so fast that being able to build some sort of engine to be able to plan for the long game to make each card in your deck play an integral piece of the puzzle is so important. Sure, there can be aggro decks that try and kill your opponent quickly before they can get their engine going, but some of my favorite cards that really are like a self-contained engine are, for example, Sedgemoor Witch that allow you to get extra value of all of your spells, or by far the coolest card, Tell Jalad Stylus. Do you want to tell everyone what that does?
Okay, yeah. So this is a card that nobody has ever heard of because it's terrible and unplayable in every other format.
It's so
Uh,
good.
but it is pack one, pick one in this cube. So Tel'Jalad Stylus is a one-mana artifact that has tap, put target permanent you own on the bottom of your library. This is like corner case playable in Commander when you're like trying to avoid like some sort of mind control effect. But what it does is it lets you buy back the ETB trigger from something like, oh, let's say Skycleave Apparition. Oh, you could buy back something like Order of Midnight. Like you cast the sorcery, you get the creature back, cast Order of Midnight, you whack them for two, and then when they try to remove it, for example, it also dodges removal. You bottom it and you draw it again next turn. So the idea that like you have to find maximum value in the cube is really important to me. Like you said, you're very limited on resources. It changes the context of these cards. So something that's a one-use effect, like Lightning Bolt, is still very powerful, but you have to balance that against a slower effect that could potentially grind your opponent out. Now, I really like that tension between tempo and value. There are decks in this cube that will murder you on turn 4 or 5.
Yes.
Somebody casts like Forsaken Miner in Bone Splitter. You better have an answer to that. You can't spend 4 turns setting up an infinite loop with Make a Wish. You will die before you get your value back. But those decks that are like these Rube Goldberg machines of infinite value, I love those. In other formats, I'm like a Simic player or a Golgari player. I am there for like the card advantage, man. That is my
Grind
bread and
value.
butter. Absolutely. We got to jund them out.
Yes. And so what would you say are some of the strongest cards in the cube? Because cards, like you said, like Lightning Bolt, could still be a first pick in here that are amazingly powerful on their own, but maybe don't give you that long-term value. What would you say are some other really strong cards in here?
Ooh. So I did recently change up a big chunk of the cube, and I actually removed a lot of the self-contained value engines
Oh, okay.
because what I want players to do is the value engines are either way on the top end at like 5 mana, which is a lot of mana in this format.
That's really hard to get to.
Yeah. Or you have to work a little bit harder for them. You have to pair two or three cards together. You have to have synergy. Powerful self-contained cards are something like Paradox Zone. It's a 5 mana enchantment. It enters with a single counter on it in the beginning of your end step. You double the number of counters on it, and then you make an XX. Well, it's 0/0 with the X count plus 1/+1 counters for X is the power. So it makes it two, it's a 5 mana enchantment that makes it 2/2, then a 4/4, then an 8/8, then a 16/16. And if your opponent has like a flicker loop with like a bounce creature, this card does nothing. But it will eventually create an arbitrarily large creature on an arbitrarily large board, and then that will win you the game. So a card like that, if you can protect it, if you build your deck for that, that's the sort of card I enjoy.
Oh, I mean, I'm huge into that kind of card or Tel'Gelad stylized. Like you said, it's basically Blink, and that's what I live for in
Yeah,
Magic. All I want to do is Blink.
you are well known for your you are well known in our group for your love affair with Soul Herder.
Oh, speaking of Soul Herder, I was going to say one of my favorite cards is Soul Herder. I mean, just being able to just get your bounce a creature every turn.
Yeah,
And in this cube, getting the recursive value is even more
yeah.
important. So,
It's
and it also can be a win condition. It gets huge
yeah,
and it can kill your opponent.
exactly. So Soul Herder, like flickering something like Laya Sky Knight, for example, every turn to detain your creature, your opponent's like key creature, or like flickering Silent Hall Creeper to reset it, and then you can
Yes.
just literally just like hit them for one every single turn, and then that's a win condition on a stalled out board. Maybe you're flickering something like Skyclave Apparition to eventually lock them out of like non-vanilla creatures, or it answers all their problem permanents, and then they just have a board of big dorks, and you have a synergy engine, so you win. Something like that. I love those decks.
And so the cube is only 200 cards,
This is
which,
actually oversized for this format, by the way.
yeah, it could be only 160 if you wanted to. Why do you have extra? Because of
So
Lore Seeker?
Lore Seeker is one of the reasons. I do really enjoy my Draft Matters cards. Lore Seeker is one of the reasons, and the other reason is I find 360 cubes to be good and fine for like regular Magic, but one of the things about those is that every time you draft it with a full pod, you see every single card all the time, which is why I actually like 540 cubes over 360 cubes, because that little bit of introduced variance means you can't just be like, I will pick combo piece A and nobody else wants combo piece B, so I'll just wait for it to wheel to me and then I can guaranteed build that deck. You have to think to yourself, am I willing to invest this pick on this card that I know synergizes powerfully with another card that other players might not want if I don't know it's in the draft? You have to draft dynamically. That's probably a holdover from how much I really enjoy chaos drafts.
Yes.
I thrive in those environments where nobody knows what they're doing. It's like if I never know what I'm doing, and as long as everyone's on the same footing, I'm pretty sure I can eke out a win there.
Oh, I mean, before I even got into Cube, Chaos Draft was one of my favorite things. At our game store, we would do every Sunday Chaos Draft, and it's crazy. It'll be pack one, a random standard pack, and then a
It'll,
collector booster,
yeah, the
and
collector
you also
booster.
get like a promo pack at the beginning of your pack, and then mystery booster at the end. So it's that was a big part of my getting used to just having a bunch of random cards in a cube.
Yeah, WotC does a great job of balancing most of their standard sets and even their supplemental sets like Modern Horizons 3 and Lord of the Rings were great draft formats. But I really enjoy the skill testing when you don't know that you can just wheel all of the mice in Bloomburrow. You're just like, okay, this is like a pretty powerful self-contained engine, but does it have synergy with other cards in Magic that I know I'm not guaranteed to get? And you have to think about the context of the format. Is like, what else is in here? It's like, oh, I see some Thunder Junction stuff. Maybe I should pick some like removal spells or like repeatable interaction with my opponents that a little more highly because I know I might get some stuff that like matters if you commit a crime.
And so with this cube, there's only 25 cards of every color, 16 colorless, and then 17 lands, which, as we said, is on top of giving even more versatility than a 160 card cube. So, how do you support archetypes when there's such a few number of cards in each color? Do you have to really focus on having cross synergy between archetypes, making sure cards not only fit into one, but in multiple? But this cube even has like some pretty niche ones like aristocrats, equipment. Tell me how that works.
Yeah, so it is very difficult sometimes to make changes to the cube because it's so small. Every change matters, and each card that is different in a deck has an outsized impact. It's not just the difference between swapping out like Llanowar elves for Arbor elves. In this cube, that matters because Arbor Elves untaps a forest, but you might be getting your green splash off of like City of Brass and Golgari Rot Farm, and you might not actually have any forests in your deck.
Arbor would be pretty bad in this cube. There's so many bounce lands. I got to take all of them.
Yeah, that's another thing. So the bounce lands are actually one of the things that I have found. This is a great home for them. The Ravnica bounce lands have become a little slow for most other cubes that I see them in, but here they're a lot more powerful because it's two lands in a single card. It's a land that taps for 2 mana, and anything that gives you more out of a single card is hugely impactful. For example, you could run 5 lands, two of which are Karus, and that leaves you with 7 mana. You know what that lets you do? That lets you hard cast Quartzwood Crasher. You don't need like a mana dork. If your mana dork gets removed, you might be in trouble, but you could still cast your stuff. It also lets you double spell like a 3 and a 4 drop, which could also be hugely impactful.
Yeah, bounce lands play a huge purpose in this format because if you're only having 4 lands in your deck, the bounce lands almost effectively let you get 5 or 6 mana out of lands. And there's a good amount of removal in this cube. So things like mana dorks are definitely vulnerable, especially when your opponent's going to draw the removal every game because they're only 15 cards.
Yeah.
So there are
So
some higher cost cards in the cube, 4 drops, 5 drops, 7 drops. There is technically also one 8 drop, but hopefully we'll be spending the full 8 mana on Avatar of Woe.
yeah, Avatar of Woe is another one of those fun build around cards. So you that either goes into the Reanimator package. It's a very powerful target for that. It also there's like a green black ramp deck that like all of their ramp is just like dorks. And the goal is you either ramp into it or if they board wipe, that puts a ton of creatures in the yard, and then you can just cast it for 2 mana.
Oh,
So
Avatar kills people. If you can get it into play, the game's over. That card
yeah,
is.
it just slowly eats your opponent's board, and they either have to swing into a 6/5, which is like the biggest creature, one of the biggest creatures you in the format, or they lose because it kills all of their engine pieces that aren't like artifacts and enchantments. So something like Avatar of Woe goes in like a couple of decks, but also something like Lion Sash goes in other decks as well. Lion Sash goes in like a Flyers archetype. It goes into the equipment deck. It goes into like a tokens deck because it makes a 1/1 into like a 5/5 threat. So the idea that, like I said, a card is either a cool build around like Avatar of Woe or like Quartzwood Crasher, or it's got to be a role player in at least 2 or 3 other decks. It has made curating the cube a little difficult. It's like a Jenga tower almost, where like one tiny change could cause the entire thing to collapse like a house of cards. But that's part
Yes.
of the fun of the curation. Like this is a very finely honed object, and it needs to be cared for. It's like a bonsai tree.
Yeah, let's say that there's 25 cards in white and 5 of those cards are for equipment, but one of them is also a crossover synergy piece into the tempo deck, let's say. And you say, I think I'm going to cut this from the tempo deck. But now there's one less card for the equipment deck. And in such a small pool, 4 cards instead of 5, it has a huge impact on the viability. So it must be almost like mathematics to be able to, and statistics to be able to make decks function while being able to make changes.
Yeah. I did mention that I recently made like a pretty big overhaul. One of the things that I changed, you mentioned the removal for the dorks earlier, is I actually pulled back on that because what was happening is the aggro decks were operating at the same speed as all of the other decks, but their whole deck was just like aggressive one drops, and then as soon as they lost their momentum, they just died. So some of the removal came out, in favor of sorcery speed removal or more limited removal. And instead, what went in their place is more interesting. Like I said, I love those build around cards. More interesting build arounds and more interesting multi-format role players. Like I recently added Wither and Bloom from Modern Horizons 3, which is just it's a last gasp variant. It shrinks a creature -3/-3, but it also exiles itself from your graveyard to put a counter on something, which is useful in an aggro deck. You use that to remove a blocker, and then once they start to stabilize, you make your biggest threat one bigger, and then all of a sudden they have to 2-for-1 themselves to get rid of it, and that lets you back through again. But it also plays into black-green counters, which is a deck that I support.
I'm a huge fan of having your removal in the cube also be archetype role players. I think that makes it even more interesting. And so tell me about the draft matter cards in here. You have Lore Seeker, Cogwork Librarian, which I think I've seen in many different queues before, but there are also three conspiracies in here, which play a huge role because they're almost like a companion.
Yes,
They're not a 16th card in your deck, but they improve one of your cards. For
yes.
example, Brago's Favor, the hidden agenda, you name a spell, cost one less. Emissary's Ploy, letting you spend mana as there were any color to cast a creature of a particular mana cost, or Secrets of Paradise, turning a creature into a Birds of Paradise.
I really, really like conspiracies. Conspiracy 1 and 2 were probably some of my favorite sets ever. I'm pretty sure between us and Eric, who owns the card shop Ian and I go to, I think Eric has probably drafted more conspiracy than any other human being on this planet. But
Yes, it was a
I,
fantastic format.
oh yeah. So the thing about the conspiracies is I actually had to dial back on those a little bit because, as you mentioned, they're not exactly a 16th card. They make your stuff better, but they have an outsized effect on your draft. One of the ones that I recently cut was Unexpected Potential.
I was going to ask about that. I love that card. That's the one that lets you name one card and it lets you cast that card as though it were man of any color. So you could be mono red and then have a Pestermite and combo off with Kiki Jiki.
Yeah. So the thing about that was it was too good at making people just build whatever they want because they build like two color things and they just didn't include like they're playing Rakdos and they just include like an Azorius card because why not? And there was no decision to make. If you had Unexpected Potential, you just played the best card that wasn't in your main deck, and there you go. So I had to be very careful. That card came out recently along with a couple of other conspiracies. I had the Black Conspiracy and the Green Conspiracy from Conspiracy 2
Oh,
that
those are so strong. The one that
they
put a
were,
counter gives you a zombie.
yeah, the one that gives you a zombie. That one got cut specifically because of the interaction with Gravecrawler.
Ooh.
Um, and the green one got cut. It was either really, really good or people just didn't play it. It was too polarizing.
The green one
So
is insanely strong. I mean, you
it
just
just makes
slowly
this,
grow your creature. It has 1/1 counter synergies.
yeah.
Like
So
putting that on the new set Twitching Doll would be so cool.
it's actually even better with another new addition, which was Tender Wild Guide, because Tender Wild Guide makes another Tender Wild Guide, so you can actually grow both of them at the same time, which
Wow.
is unfortunately one of the reasons it had to be cut. It was just too good at what it did, which
Oh,
was
they both have the
outside.
same name for
They
offspring.
have the same
Wow.
name, yes. So
That's insane.
yeah, so those got cut. But I will tell you a story of another conspiracy that got cut for power level reasons, which is Backup Plan. Now, for people who don't know what Backup Plan does, you draw two opening hands and you choose which one you want to keep and you shuffle the other one back. In normal Magic, that's like, whatever. It's basically like a free mulligan. In this format, you get to choose which half of your library you want to start with in your hand. It was way too good. It was probably one of the first cards cut a couple years back.
I've played vintage cubes with that in it. That card is absurd. I think it's better than power. It always basically meant that when you were playing an aggro deck, you had 1, 2, 3 curve and you would just kill your opponent every time. My friend Schmidt Word, unfortunately, he moved away, but he had his vintage cube and it had a lot of conspiracies in it. That one was definitely one of the best, and it's really strong.
In general, conspiracies scale to the power of the cards that they're modifying. Nobody cares that your crawl worm costs one less. People do care when your frantic search costs one less.
And you also have like Regicide in the cube, which lets you choose a color and the person to your left and your right choose a color too. And then it becomes a 3 color removal spell. That one's really fun also.
Yeah, that's another interesting one because you know what colors you're in pretty quickly in this draft. And if somebody drafts Regicide, that's a very strong signal that they are going to be in black. And you can then sculpt that removal spell to be unable to affect your deck. So suppose that you're sitting to their left and the person to their right chooses green and they choose white, and you look at your deck and you're playing like blue-red aggro, and you can just look at them and say black, and then all of a sudden that blanks a card in their deck, which is neat for you, and then maybe that forces an interesting sideboard decision for them.
And it's also really funny because you kind of get an insight into colors that they're playing, the
Yes.
colors that they name. So that
I
card is also really
I
fun.
will tell you a story about CubeCon, which is that at CubeCon every year there's a build our own draft event, which is a bunch of people get together in the Discord and we design a bunch of custom cards. I'm not going to name any of them because you never know who's listening, but the way it works is you design 45 cards in a vacuum. You're given a rough power level to aim for, and you're just like, have fun. You could design whatever you want. You could design 45 green cards, 45 black cards. You could design like a normal balanced set. You could design a bunch of planeswalkers and enchantments and have nothing, or you could design 45 lands or something like that. And then they are checked very briefly for grammar and accidentally going infinite with themselves. And then everyone they
Hostage
get
taker
the
situation.
hostage taker type situation, yes sir. And then these cards are printed up and we draft them at KubeCon blind. It's like a chaos draft if you've never played Magic before because you don't recognize any of the cards.
I want to
And
play that for Halloween. That would be so fun.
oh, it's going to be great. And my draft section included 33% Draft Matters cards by volume because I know I'm the only person in the universe who loves them that much, except for maybe you and except for maybe Eric.
Yes. And so tell me what like the tempo of this microcube is. How fast do games usually go? What kind of power level are you shooting for?
So the cube is designed to be roughly modern equivalent power level. There are a couple outliers up or down. For example, Swords to Plowshares is in the cube and Lightning Bolt are in the cube. They're just good, strong cards. You
Swords to
still need
Plowshare
stuff.
is even better here because it means that you can't recur your crazy engine.
Yes. Neil's Microcube, which was at CubeCon this year, played very heavily with the Exile Zone. One of the cards that I passed, but sort of regret not drafting, is Pull from Eternity, which puts an
Oh,
exiled card into its owner's graveyard. And in any other format, that's kind of useless. But if you get your combo piece scoozed, it's a great way to put it back and try again.
oh, that's so important. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
so the mana curve of the cube is a lot lower than what you might normally expect in a cube. Because you don't have access to lots of mana over several turns, it's very difficult to multi-spell because you generally cap out at 4 or 5 mana, which means that a draw go deck that just seeks to counter the first spell you play and then flash in like a 1/1 flyer would be very, very good. So instead, this cube has a lot of more interesting inclusions. You've got some tempo-oriented stuff and some aggro stuff. You've got stuff like Doomed Traveler. You've got stuff like Carrion Feeder. You see Monastery Swiftspear. You see Llanowar Elves. These are some pretty classic small drops. But you also see some other stranger small inclusions. I'm not sure anybody has had a chance to play with Jotun Grunt in a very long time, not since people have drafted Cold Snap. But that's a 2 mana 4/4. That's big. Yeah, I love that hidden keyword big. It forces your opponent to two for one themselves to get rid of it. You also see something like
What does Jotun
Ship.
Grunt do? Tell us the audience.
Jotun Grunt is 1 and a white for a 4/4, and it has cumulative upkeep. Put 2 cards in a single graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. Again, pulling back into that engine thing, this buys cards back that you've already spent. And if you want to keep it, you might be forced to put cards back in your opponent's library as well.
That card is so amazingly cool. I mean, it's kind of like a win con in itself. It's a 4/4, but it also resets your deck. But you have to be careful with it, like you said. And it's also interesting because it says a single graveyard. You can't
Yes.
split it up. It's very cool. I think that's one
So
of my favorite
each of
cards in
those
the game.
cumulative upkeep triggers can actually target a different player. So if you have 4 cards in your graveyard, the first upkeep you put 2 back on your own, and if you wanted to keep it, you could put 2 more back from your graveyard and 2 more from an opponent's graveyard. Or
Oh,
you might decide, I got 2 cards back in this block, and this like held off an attack for a turn. Maybe you're playing a control deck, and that's actually the secret reason that's in there. It's just
very
fog stapled
interesting.
to like put some cards back. Yeah, like I said, context dependent. I love to see it.
And so, do you think that the smaller deck size creates more intense decision making compared to larger cubes where players have to be a lot more flexible? They can just throw in things. You can even play more than 40 cards if you wanted.
It does. So deck building decisions matter a lot more. The difference between playing Orzhov Basilica, two plains in a swamp versus Orzhov Basilica, two swamps and one plains might matter a lot.
I've definitely
Espe-
screwed up my mana on this cube.
yeah, between the Thriving Lands and the Karoo lands, the mana fixing is pretty good, but you have to be very careful about how you sequence your plays and about what order you play your lands in. Sometimes you get a free gimme. You play a Thriving Land and you reset it with a bounce land. That always feels good. But sometimes you're like, oh no, I've got a single blue source and I've got two blue cards. Or you're like, I set it up and I have double blue, but one of the spells I want to cast is a double blue spell, and I have no way to find a third blue source, so now I'm going to lose the game because I set my Thriving Land to the wrong color.
Real gamer mode is have three different bounce lands that all are different colors and go five color soup.
Yeah,
That's powerful magic.
real gamer mode is drawing your opening hand and having three bounce lands and no other basics. I've seen you complain about that before.
It's so good. You're like, this hand is insane, but I lose the game instantly if I keep it.
Yeah. I've got a bad beat story to tell about that, by the way. I kept an opening hand, I played a land, I played a bounce land, and my opponent went untap, kick this Tide Shaper, turn your Karoo into an island. And I'm like, now
Oh,
I hard lose this game because I
that's so
essentially just stone
nasty.
ranged myself. Yeah. They were playing a very interesting variation of the Emissary's Ploy deck on one drops, which I don't see very frequently. So Emissary's Ploy is before you draw your opening hand, you choose one, two, or three, and then you can spend mana or mana of any color to cast creatures of that number. So you could build a rainbow one color deck, and you're just like mono black, and you're playing five colors of dudes, and your mono black is literally just for tempo removal spells, and you can kill people that way. Again, you can build whatever five color soup and nonsense value engine you want, but you're gonna die to the guy casting Dread Wanderer followed by Great Sword of Tyr, and you're never gonna have a blocker again.
Oh, Tide Shaper is even more disgusting in this cube. Is let's say you have one swamp in your deck and it gets turned into an island, it's over. Oh my gosh, that's so
Yeah.
cool.
That Tide Shaper actually occupies a space that used to be occupied by Spreading Seas, which did the same thing but was harder to interact with. So I
Yes.
decided to pull back on that a little bit. So relatedly, there are some effects that I have kept out of this cube deliberately, some by decision and others by very painful lessons learned. One of those is land destruction. I think Tide Chipper is the only way to interact with your opponent's mana base at the moment. I used to have Molten Rain and Stone Rain and Wasteland in here. Those got slowly cut over time because it turned out that the bounce lands were way too vulnerable to that. It felt awful. At the very least, with Tide Shaper,
You can unlock your land again.
you can unlock your land again. But if you get like your Celestial Sanctuary wastelanded and that just hoses you, it's miserable. And the counterplay is there is none because there's no way to remove the wasteland.
Yeah, play regrowth back on your bounce land.
Yeah. Other things that got cut pretty early. Mill effects are far too
Oh,
good.
mill is disgusting.
I'll share with you a card that got cut early for being too powerful. You may remember playing with this card, most powerful card in the cube, even more so than Tel'Gelad Stylus, and that is Thought Picker Witch.
Stock picker witch. Yeah, tell us
Thought
what that
Picker
one
Witch
does.
is one black for a human wizard. It's a 1/1, and it has pay one of any color, sacrifice a creature, look at the top two cards of target player's library, and exile one of them.
Yeah, that was in the vintage cube for a hot minute.
This was wretched to play against because your play would be turn one, play like Gravecrawler, pass. Turn two, play Thought Picker Witch. And if your opponent tried to remove the Thought Picker Witch, you would respond by sacrificing itself, and you would look at the top two cards of their library, and you would exile a land or the only card in their deck that did anything against you, and then they were immediately unable to win. And if they did
Oh,
kill
taking
it,
all the lands out of their
yeah.
deck. Oh my
And if they didn't,
gosh.
so in that case, it two for one them because they tried to remove it and you blanked it by sacrificing itself in response, and you ate a card out of the deck. And if they didn't remove it, you would sacrifice Gravecrawler and do the same thing, but then you would play another zombie and play the Gravecrawler and just eat their entire library.
That's
It was
crazy.
it was horribly uninteractive. It was uniquely powerful for the format, which was interesting for about 5 games before people really got tired of it, so it got cut. One card that I have actually considered adding back is Ghoul Color's Belt because it is symmetrical.
Yes.
So symmetrical effects I think would be fine, but
Give us lantern control. Yes.
absolutely not Perish. But one card that I did cut was Thought Scour because again,
Ooh.
it
Yeah,
draws you a
that's
card, and then
insane.
you like the self-mill deck isn't really there. There are some decks that play around with a graveyard, but you have to find other ways to get cards into your graveyard because milling yourself, the risk is too great. If you hit like a land or something or like a key piece that you can't get back, you're in deep trouble. So yeah, just draw a card, eat the top fifth of your opponent's library was too good.
So what would you say are some of your favorite cards from Dustmore that you've added? Like I see that you added, I think, 22
Ooh.
cards from the new set, which is
Yeah,
a lot, which is really cool.
I went all in. I did a big update recently before KubeCon that I did not test it at all because I like to live dangerously. But some of the cool ones that I like, Mabel Heir to Cragflame is from Bloomborough, recent. It's in there to support the equipment archetype.
That's
The Lord,
perfect.
te yeah, the Lord text doesn't really matter, but the key thing is it's a good equipment that just comes with a free body.
A 3/3
Um,
is great in here.
3/3s are great. Another great example is Wildfire Wicker Folk, again, to support some of those tempo archetypes that want to pressure your opponent.
Which one is
Um,
that one?
it's Gruul. It's a red and a green for a 3/2 with haste, which is good stats. And if you have Delirium, which is a little trickier to achieve in this cube, but still pretty easily doable, it's a 4/3 with trample and haste for 2 mana. Those oversized stats for the mana cost are highly valuable in this cube because most of the creatures are so small. Another great example is Undead Sprinter. It's the perfect kind of
That
card
card's
that a
great
retro.
in here.
I see it in a bunch of other cubes too, and I'm like, nice, I like it. It's great because it's a recurable value creature, which is much more valuable in a cube where you only have 15 cards.
An Undead Sprinter is a black and a red for a 2/2 trample haste, and you can cast him from your graveyard if a non-zombie creature died, and it comes over with a 1/1 counter. So it's kind of the opposite of Gravecrawler, but they do go in the same deck.
Yeah. So you like Fatal Push their Dork, you cast it again, you swing for 3, it comes with a counter. Maybe you're cross-pollinating with their black-green counters, or maybe you're going to hit them for 3 and then immediately sacrifice it to cast Bone Shards and then just do it again next turn. Or maybe like your late game play is you cast Victimize, sacrificing something else. And you get the 2 creatures back, but then you also get to cast Undead Sprinter out of your graveyard as a blocker because the Victimize brings stuff back tapped.
Yeah. And some of my favorite cards that I see in the cube are, I think it's so cool that you've Overlord of the Mistmores in here, which is a 7 drop. I mean, it's 5 white, but it also has impending for 2 white, which means you have to wait 4 turns. And at the end of every turn, a time counter is removed. And when it enters or attacks, you get 2/2/1 insects with flying, and it's a 6/6. My new achievement unlock that I want to do is hardcast this in like a blue eye
Yeah.
control deck and just murder
So
everybody.
you could cast that in the blue eye control deck. There's like a green white tokens deck that might want that.
Oh, that's
It
perfect
goes
there too.
into the it goes into white black reanimator, and the failure case is you literally just cast it for 4 mana. It gets snapped up by like a disenchant of some sort, but it still comes with 2/2/1 flyers, and maybe that's enough.
Oh, I mean, 2/2/1 flyers is really hard to do within this cube,
Yeah, you got there.
except for if like the opponent has seismic waves, Sam's favorite card.
That is Sim's favorite card, isn't it?
And another card that I really like in here is Silent Hall Creeper, which is 1 and a blue for a 1/1, can't be blocked. A lot of words on this card. And when it deals damage, you can choose one of 3 options once. You can put 2 counters on it, draw a card, becomes a copy of another creature. I think it's so interesting how you can put counters on it and then have it become a copy of another creature and it keeps the counters.
This
It's
is one of
just,
those
I think, this is such
interesting
great design.
self-contained value engines that I really like. In the worst case scenario, what it does is it's an unblockable 3/3. If you have no other creatures, it's just an unblockable 3/3. And then maybe you play like a hard control shell around that. Or maybe it's copying another creature, like maybe it copies Jotun Grunt, and then you let Jotun Grunt die to its cumulative upkeep trigger so that you can cycle back the original Jotun Grunt, and you're essentially resetting the age counters for cumulative upkeep there to keep that idea manageable. Or maybe you just like make an unblockable like Shiv and Wumpus or something like that.
Shiv and Wumpus. I love that
Shiv
you
and
have the Wumpus in here. You
Shiv and
have
Wumpus. I
two
have Shiv
Wumpus in
and I
here.
have two. Yes, the Wumpai. I don't think that's the proper plural, but so I used to have Haunted Wumpus in the cube, and that recently got swapped out for Wumpus Aberration from Modern Horizons 3. And the
So
only
what does
real
Shiv and Wumpus do?
Shift and Wumpus is 3 and a red for a 6/6 with trample. And when it ETBs, anybody may sacrifice a land. And if they do, Shiv and Wumpus goes back on top of its owner's library. Now, Normally, this card is terrible because you have lands aplenty and you essentially just time walk your opponent when they cast this. But sacrificing a land in this cube is a real cost. Sometimes you can do that. Sometimes you're like, yeah, I'm playing aggro and you just tapped out for this and I'm going to put it back and kill you. So you definitely should have done something else like remove my guys. But sometimes it's like, gosh, this is a 6/6 with trample. I can't swing past this and it'll kill me really quickly, but I don't know if I can afford to sacrifice a land. So
Yeah,
it
I really
forces your
wonder what the
opponent to make
right
a
play
tough.
pattern is. Do you just let it come in? Do you like
I think it
tempo
depends.
it
I think it
out?
depends. Yeah, I think it depends on whether or not you have like a Doom Blade effect in your hand. Honestly,
That's
if
true.
you get Swords to Plowshares, you're chilling. You're like you can have 6 life. But if you don't, if you have a sorcery speed removal spell that like maybe doesn't kill it, you have to think very critically about whether or not you want to sacrifice that land.
And
Maybe
Wumpus
you
Aberration is really funny because there actually are ways to make colorless mana in this cube.
there's a couple ways, but like this is one of those cards. I mostly made the switch because the trample is a good upgrade for this deck. There's a lot of tiny little Dorcases running around, and sometimes the 6/6 just can never get in, no matter how big it is. Putting this in and telling your opponent you can put any creature you want from your hand into play is really good when your opponent's like, but the biggest creature in my hand is a 2/2 with flying.
6/6 trample kills people.
6/6 trample kills people. That's actually also why I recently added Boldware Heavyweights, which is another one of those nonsense cards that's awful in every format except specifically this one. It's 2 red for an 8/8 with trample,
Oh
and
my
when it
gosh.
ETBs, each opponent gets to search their library for a creature and put it into play. Which again, normally that's a wretched drawback. You do not want your opponent emeralding you for 4 mana from you. You pay me to like tooth and nail a creature, absolutely. But if your opponent's library is, say, empty, because there's only 15 cards at the start, it's a lot better. And
Now one
again,
of my dreams in the cube is I want to have the Boldware Heavyweights, the 8/8 trample, and combine it with Quartzwood Crasher. Whenever a creature you control with trample gets in there, you get a creature equal to its power, so you can
yeah.
get more 8/8 tramples.
Yeah, sometimes you bold were heavyweights and win, and other times you bold were heavyweights and they go find Skyclave Apparition and exile it. That's just the way the world works
Yeah,
sometimes. You
that's the
run
way the
those
cookie
risks.
crumbles.
Yeah.
So this has been great. Let's jump into a pack one, pick one from the cube. We got a really cool pack here. Do you want to
All
read
right.
us the pack?
Sure. So the pack I was given has Yadaro Wandering Monster, which is 7 for an 8/8 trample haste, cycling for 1 in a red. When you cycle it, it shuffles into your library, and if you cycled it 4 times, instead of going into your library, it goes onto the battlefield. You have Null Priest of Oblivion, 1 in a black for a 2/1, kicker for 3 in a black. It's got Medicine Lifelink, and when it ETBs, if it was kicked, you reanimate a creature from your graveyard. This is an interesting card. This is also in there to, it's actually 2 cards. Half of it is a very difficult to block aggressive creature that's difficult to race, and the other half is a Fist in the Reanimator deck. And sometimes, like your aggro game goes late and you kick it. We've got Wumpus Aberration. Again, we just talked about this. 4 mana
So
6/6
cool.
trample. If you didn't pay colorless to cast it, your opponent gets to put a creature into play from their hand. Paradox Zone, which I
With
think I
Devoid.
mentioned with the voice.
But matters for Regicide.
Yeah, it does matter for Regicide. Again, one of those like tiny deck building things that you've really got to think about. Paradox Zone, we talked about this. It makes a 2/2, then a 4/4, then an 8/8, then a 6/16. Carrion Feeder. We have Invasion of Tolvada. We've got an Is It Boilerworks? We've got
What does the
Rotten.
invasion do? I was looking at it. It seems
Okay.
really strong.
So Invasion of Tolvada is 3, a white and a black. When it ETBs, it's a reanimator. It reanimates a non-battle permanent. So maybe you can't get that
Non-battle
one.
important.
Yeah. It can't get back another copy of Invasion. This was for consideration for constructed,
True,
but
true.
not for here. It's got 5 defense, and when it's destroyed, it flips into the Broken Sky, which is an enchantment that makes a 1/1 flyer every turn, and it gives your tokens +1/+0 and lifelink. So
So strong.
yeah, it actually makes a 2/1 lifelink flyer every turn. Is it
And pumps your other
Boilerworks?
tokens.
Oh yeah, a punch your other tokens too. Again, cross-pollination from the Reanimator into the token strategy. Rotten Mouth Viper is in this pack from Bloomburrow. 5 and a black for a 6/6. You can sack any number of permanents when you cast it. Costs 1 less that way, non-land permanents. And when it ETBs or attacks, it gets a blight counter, and then it either drains your opponent for 4, or they sack a non-land or discard a card for each counter on it. Twitching Doll, another new addition from Duskmourn.
Such a cool card.
It's a very cool card. Also, don't look at the art too close. It's really creepy. 1 and a green for a 2/2. It's an artifact creature, Spider Toy. It's a mana dork. It taps for 1 of any color, and every time you tap it for mana, it gets a nest counter. And you can tap sack it for a 2/2 green creature with reach for each nest counter on it as a sorcery. So once it's done making mana, once the board's stalled out, you tap it a couple more times, then you pop it open and let loose a horde of
The
spiders.
part that I didn't realize is that it doesn't say for each nest counter. It says for each counter on it.
This
So
is
if you
true.
can put other counters on it, I was a little uncertain about this card at first, but when I realized it's for every counter, I was like, this is going immediately in my proliferate cubes. So cool.
Yes, you can add +1/+1 counters to this. It doesn't just go in the green red ramp package, it also goes in the green black counters deck. Like if you reanimate it with like a finality counter on it, that's just +1 spider for later.
Yeah.
And then the final card in this pack is Bone Shards. One black, destroy target creature or planeswalker as a sorcery. Its initial cost, sack a creature or discard a card.
I mean, this is a very Halloween feeling pack. We got a
It's
doll made of
very,
spiders. We got a big snake. We got some vampires.
oh, it's extremely spooky. It's full of zombies and monsters and creepy crawlies.
What are you
So,
thinking from this pack?
so this is interesting. One thought here is to make a pick with the intention of wheeling something. There's a couple cards in here that are mid picks that you could conceivably wheel, and there's some that are high picks that if you pick them, it points you in a certain direction, and then hopefully you can wheel that. For example, one thing you could consider taking is Bone Shards and hope to wheel Invasion of Tolvada. Because
That's cool.
what that lets you do is that lets you pitch something for later and then wheel the invasion. You could also go in the opposite direction. You could pick Rottenmouth Viper and then hope to wheel something like Null Priest of Oblivion. Or you could take the Twitching Doll, because that's a mana creature that keeps you open for the green-red deck. You could wheel the Yadaro or the Wumpus, and that also lets you possibly wheel the Carrion Feeder. I don't expect Carrion Feeder to wheel, but like a guy can dream, right? So like Twitching Doll and Carrion Feeder, it's a 2/2. Like sometimes those just get there. You use it to accelerate out an aggressive board, and then once it's done, you sack it for a bunch of blockers that you can eat with Carrion Feeder. And then, of course, there's always the thought of, well, there's no blue cards, but maybe I take the Is It Boilerworks anyways, because you always first pick fixing.
Boilerworks is honestly a consideration. It's just
It's an
so
interesting
powerful.
consideration because you may also see that there are a bunch of expensive spells in this pack, and being able to cast those more reliably in the later turns, you might wheel Yadaro or you might wheel like the Paradox Zone, and then the Is It Boilerworks could literally just be like an off-color splash, or maybe like we get past to like a blue heavy pack. It is cube. You never know what the color balance in the packs are going to be.
Yeah, like for some color pairs, if you can't have mana dorks, the Boilerworks or the bounce lands are some of your only ways to get to higher costs. So they're or higher mana without putting
Yeah.
in like six lands in your deck or something.
That's actually a consideration for like the blue-white tempo deck, especially. I think people have been playing that deck incorrectly in the cube. They play it very low to the ground, but what I think you really want is like six lands because you want to be able to double or even triple spell. You want to be able to advance a board state and then also be able to hold up like Familiar's Ruse or something.
I think from this pack, I'm on either Twitching Doll or Rottenmouth Viper. Rottenmouth Viper just ends the game. I mean, it's basically like a Grave Titan that it comes in, the opponent is going to die, or they're going
Yeah.
to two for one. They're going to sack things. It costs less. You can sack tokens, or you can reanimate it. So it puts you in a lot of different directions. And also the Twitching Jaw, like I said, five color stuff. That's my go-to. And it's a mana dork, which is really good. It's a decent body. And then late game, it can win the game. So I one of those are the two for me. I think I might be on Twitching Doll though.
So I'm going to be spicy here. I think my pick is actually Bone Shards. And the reason for
Oh,
this is because when I did that big pass recently, you may have heard me mention one of the things I pulled back a little bit
was
on was
removal.
efficient removal. Bone Shards is very, very good removal in that it is unconditional. Most of the other removal in this cube, aside from like the some of the power outliers,
Like Source
like
Splashers.
Swords to Plowshares, they're conditional. They only either kill small creatures or they're like Regicide. They don't kill creatures of all colors. Bone Shards just says, get it out of my way. And on top of that, it's a synergy pick with the Reanimator deck, which we will be wheeling at least one piece. I expect Invasion of Tolvada to wheel, so I might pick that. Or it also could fit in an aggressive deck. It's cheap. It costs one mana. If Carrion Feeder or Null Priest of Oblivion wheels, that deck might be open, and I might be on like a black-red aggro deck, like an Aristocrats deck, or I might be on like a black-white an aggressive low to the ground deck. Invasion of Tolvada's there as a signpost, but that doesn't mean that you still can't run people over with like one mana 2/1s, and those
People don't
colors
read
are
battles, it'll wheel.
people is like you mean I gotta rotate my neck? I've already got issues from sleeping
I
bad.
gotta rotate the neck, and I gotta take it out the sleeve, and I have to know what a battle does.
And I gotta
Oh
read the
my
backside of the
gosh.
card.
Oh, well, Jamie, it's been so awesome having you on today's episode. We hit a lot of really cool topics, and I definitely hope to have you on again in the future. Do you have any other thoughts that you have? Anything else you want to say before we close out here?
Well, I thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's a cool project, and I will, given the chance, I will never shut up about this format, and I will never shut up about Cube. It's so nice to talk about it. I'd love to come back on some other time. This cube lends itself very well to some other topics. One of those is like the way cards appear in certain contexts, and I would love to come back and you can pick my brain about some of those other basic ideas.
I think it'd be really fun to have you on also to have an episode where we compare Chaos Draft more in depth to Cube. That would be really interesting also.
Chaos Draft is a great segue into Cube because what it does is it forces people to think about cards in new, fresh contexts. Retail draft is great, but sometimes you look at a card and you think, wow, I really wish I was drafting a different set right now because this would go really well with it. Infamous flashbacks to doing a Chaos Draft and drafting two copies of Rosy Cotton, a Scurry Oak, and a Herd Bale.
Oh
That
my gosh. That's
Yeah,
so
those packs
lit.
shouldn't have been together. It's the sub game within the draft is find the two card infinite in the packs that were not meant to be drafted together.
Yes. So, thank you all for listening. I hope you have a great day and stay tuned for more episodes in the future. Subscribe, and we'll see you soon.